not work with the kind of alacrity, with the kind of enthusiasm and the speed that we should to arrive at some kind of results. So I commend the timelines, but I still want to maybe just throw a word of caution here, and in some of the commitments that have been made. There is one that was mentioned, the post-elections report, which says that at the sitting, that's 25A, at the sitting immediately following the first sitting of the new parliament, following the general election, the minister shall prepare and submit to parliament a post-elections report setting out the following. And it lists a number of things which I would not go into. Mr. Speaker, this is the meeting after the first one. And there's a number of details that the minister went into to let us know what would be presented. And therefore, it means that government has to undertake to ensure that they have the necessary human resource to do that, to deliver to the people. And we will remember the commitment that was made for the second sitting of the parliament after an election. And there was one, and I'm looking for it, where it says that certain information must go to the Fiscal Responsibility Committee, and within 2 weeks, they must give a report on that. So again, this is another promise here in this honorable house to our people. And so I have nothing against it. It's good, it's noble, but we have to be careful what we promise and what we promise to the people, and to ensure that we put the mechanisms in place to make sure that we deliver to the people. So I again compliment the presentation. I am very skeptical about the level of consultation that has been made. But Mr. Speaker, anything that will redound to the satisfaction of our nation, I have high regard and high respect for it, but the commendations and the compliments will come when we see the results. So, Mr. Speaker, on this contribution, I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, MP, for the constituency. What's the mark? Is it MP4? St. George Northeast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was willing to give way to my senior in this honorable house, but he said that I can proceed. So I think I have his blessings. Mr. Speaker, I rise in full support of this amendment. In my view, it is forward-thinking and seeks to broaden the definition of public finance management. It will, in sense, incorporate in the existing Public Finance Management Act the essential elements of fiscal responsibility without the need for a separate act to do so. Essentially, the executive's plan, Mr. Speaker, is to bolster the existing related legislations around maintaining our fiscal responsibility while somewhat changing our approach to include as well and look at the fiscal sustainability or fiscal resilience in this sense. So, for example, Clause 2 of the amendment, Part B, public debt, will now include all direct liabilities of central government, statutory bodies, and state-owned enterprises, including advances, arrears, compensation, claims, etc. What this will do is to give the government a more comprehensive understanding of our national debt situation, or the economy, so to speak, so that we can have more accurate policies and measures to target some of the situations or problems that we may observe. And this comprehensive approach is critical because, as you know, Mr. Speaker, one of the biggest tasks small economies as Grenada faces, or situation it faces, is that of the externalities. Now, we are subjected to the ravages of climate change. We are subjected to all sorts of things, including wars, other economic challenges that are beyond our borders, but also interact and impact us. And as such, the need to take a comprehensive look at our situation is critical. And this is what this amendment seeks to do. Mr. Speaker, similarly, to include the definition of public-private partnership, subsection A, statutory body or state-owned enterprise, is a good thing because it means the fiscal situation is not only going to be looked at from central government standpoint, but is now going to be looked at statutory bodies or in collaboration or combination of the statutory bodies. This is critical because, Mr. Speaker, it means that we may see more comprehensive management of our public finances, including the state-owned bodies, so that situations such as marketing board must never be allowed to continue or exist or repeat itself. It must never be allowed to repeat itself. And Mr. Speaker, it is critical because where we need to go in the whole question of managing our fiscal situation is not just applying strong measures of increased taxation just to get more revenues in layman terms, but it is to look at it in a combination of how you manage that situation with your revenue intake, but also be able to grow the economy in a sustainable and resilient manner. So I fully support this amendment. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that I think it is long overdue. A repeal and replace for the Fiscal Responsibility Act is something that, as a young man during the Senate, I personally championed. I was told that I'm not an economist, so I should not challenge such a thing, that it's needed, etc. But what was interesting is that every year, back then, the FROC would report that we were in breach of the legislation. And as a young parliamentarian then, I couldn't understand why we were not willing to take the necessary steps to get that right. And so I am pleased to stand in full support of the amendment put forward by the Leader of Government Business, and to say that the leadership of this administration is keen on ensuring that while we talk about the expansion of the economy, we are going to do it not just in a fiscal responsible manner, but in a fiscal resilient manner, which will then make for a more broader, objective, comprehensive look and management of our economic affairs. So thank you, Mr. Speaker. With these few words, I rest my case.
Thank you, Honorable MP for St. George North East. Honorable Leader of His Majesty Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just to reinforce the points made by my colleague, Member St. Mark's, as it relates to this amendment. I think she captured it well when she indicated there's a lot of rebranding of names, of issues here. So one will not comment and one wishes to call something A or B. That's not the key. It's the substance of it that's important. So it's a lot of rebranding, not necessarily a lot of substance as far as many of these issues are concerned. But I'm wondering, it's noble, Mr. Speaker, to promise all kinds of things on a document, as the member quite rightly pointed out. And I get the impression this document was not written by politicians. I really do not believe politicians. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody could tell me otherwise. I get the impression this thing is written by bureaucrats sitting in a certain place in the so-called ideal world of words. But the practicality, the ability to implement and satisfy those objectives is left to the ones that have to take responsibility for the end product. And then when the licks start to come, no bureaucrats come and say, no, it's not him, it's me. He doesn't say that at all. So I'm just cautioning members. There are a lot of members on the side of the house. It's green. And I passed through the stage where I thought we could do everything and promising to make everything look like it comes from heaven, but it simply does not work. So I'm concerned about this because in the end, the result is what you promise here is what people will judge you from. So I urge caution here. I also, in the same context, a government comes into office after a general election, post-elections report, and you're promising to bring a comprehensive review, financially and otherwise, in an early period of the parliament. This is noble. If it can happen, all praise. The question is, will that happen? That government won, this government won election June 23rd. In cases where most people that never saw the House of Parliament before, who've not really were versed in many of the intricacies of financial matters, historically so, I mean, in terms of practice. Can we blame them when they come to Parliament if they didn't give me a report, as this is indicating? Could I get up and say, where is the report? I don't know that it would have been fair. I do not believe that it's practical, and I do not believe that the next government coming into office, whoever that may be, should not be asked to satisfy. I may be on the sidelines, so don't worry about me. I've had my days. So I'm making the point. They're watching and wondering, well, how could that government be able to present the kind of report that's being suggested here? As I said, it's so noble. Colleagues, it's impractical. If I could bet, right, seriously so, that any incoming government will not be able to achieve this. That is my thing. And if they could do it, I would be the first one to say, you're the greatest. I really caution. The Minister of Finance is not here, but I really believe the government is bringing this and he says he can do it. And this is okay. So I'm not here opposing it. I'm just suggesting, Mr. Speaker, I don't believe it's achievable. That's all I'm saying. But finally, Mr. Speaker, something I should have said at the beginning first. I noticed the member for St. George's Southeast was tentative today in many things. And I could understand this. No, to lose your father, I lost one, 7. And although he was sick for a while, it was still difficult to deal with that. So every time I see someone losing a family member that close, it touches me. I'm sure many of you have seen the post. And yesterday celebrated my mother's 101. So she compensated for the loss of my father, the fact that she's still here and be able to walk around and be with us yesterday having lunch, and she was giving all the jokes. So my friend, to you, my sympathy on your person. I think it's a miracle that you're here to be doing it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Leader of His Majesty Opposition. Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was debating with the leader of government's business whether we ought not to have interjected in light of the fact that the fiscal responsibility bill was not being taken through all of the stages today and would be dealt with next week, Tuesday, whether or not we shouldn't have done so with the other 2 pieces of legislation. And I was saying to him, I certainly have no qualms with that, because in fact, I think it was at the request of the Honorable Dr. Clarence Morisco in that we agreed to push the fiscal responsibility back to next Tuesday so that sufficient time could be given to anyone who felt they needed additional time to debate the bills. And clearly, it's a package, and to some extent, the Fiscal Responsibility Act is, in a sense, the main driver that, in fact, requires the amendments to the other two bills that we're considering today. So I'm saying this because I don't want it to be said that we never consider giving ourselves or our colleagues more time to study a bill and debate it. So I'm saying for the record, it will not hurt, and I'm still prepared, subject to the concurrence of the leader of government's business, proposing to the House that we do so, that we can do so, because I think it will also address the issue of consultation, and that was raised by the London member for St. Mark, because there has been extensive consultation, and we would see that this question of particularly the fiscal responsibility bill has been on the cards for review since 2015. And in fact, substantive reviews and technical consultations were done under the former administration, and we are already only building upon that. The FROC, the trade unions, etc., the Chamber of Commerce, all of these entities were consulted. So I'm saying I obviously do support the bill, but I'm happy if the members of the House are so inclined, and if the leader of government business is so inclined, and the House is so inclined to, in fact, have those two bills taken next week as well, because in short, and to a large extent, the amendments are consequent as a result of the need to have a new Fiscal Responsibility Act in place, and it will certainly allow, I think, anyone more time if they so wish to review and study. So I thought I should make that interjection for the record.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. Honorable members, the question is, Honorable Prime Minister, let me make sure I get you clearly. The first of the bill has been passed. You're looking at the other three?
Yes, I'm talking about the financial the financial bills, not the licensing. I'm saying financial.
I know.
Yes, because that one has been passed. I'm saying
the other three.
Right. So I'm saying if the members so minded, I'm happy to just simply have the first reading today, and we obviously do the debates second and third reading next Tuesday, because the fiscal.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Let me hear the leader of the opposition. You want to make a comment?
Just a short. I think the Prime Minister is very much on target there. Mr. Speaker, that plan, in fact, they're prepared thoroughly to deal with resilience bill today. I really realize the seriousness of this bill, really financial in a general sense. And in fact, it was difficult attempting to prepare for this without keep mentioning all the other bills. It's like one bill, really. It's just like ABC, D. And therefore, that makes a lot of sense. And I was going to ask you for your permission if this resilient bill was going forward. I was asking permission to treat this as my comments on this with the context of all the other bills. So I need a little more time than the time allotted to a member to make a comment on one bill, because it had to be encompassing the entire 4 bills in my presentation to make it look effective. So the point is very, very much on target.
All right. So, honorable members, do you have government business? Oh, no, I see.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, having heard Leader of the Opposition and the Honorable Prime Minister, I therefore move that first and foremost, that we suspend the earlier resolution that was made, that the House consider taking the bill through all of its stages, and that it be now suspended at this point in time. Then we'll take the others. All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. All right.
So we have to lead our government to make sure we're clear on this before we make on it.
Okay. I am now going to call a recess so we get clarity for the clerk on this particular matter and we proceed thereafter.
So, Mr. Speaker, if I may, I think we believe as members that we may have a solution and that doesn't require us to have a recess. I think the leader of His Majesty's opposition has suggested, given that we've in fact had the debates on this particular bill, that we can conclude the process on the bill. And then we would obviously perhaps just have the first reading for the third bill, and then we will take, when we deal with the Fiscal Responsibility Act, we will just deal with, in a sense, because they are related next week. If that's fine.
Yes, that's exactly the issue he was raising. So, yes, that we close this one off. Correct. Lovely. So, yeah, I sent the debate is concluded on that. Right? Other members? Yeah, the question is that the bill be read a second time. All those of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it.
A bill for enact shortly entitled Public Finance Management Amendment Bill 2023.
Deal of government business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I now move that the House resolves itself into a committee of the whole House to consider this bill clause by clause or part by part. Thank you.
Honourable members, the question is that this Honourable House resolve itself into a committee of the whole House. Consider the bill clause by clause. All those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it. This Honourable House is now in committee.
Clause 2, Amendment of Section 2 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 2, Amendment of Section 2 of the Principal Act forms part of the bill. All those of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 3, Amendment of Section 4 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 3, Amendment of Section 4 of the Principal Act forms part of the bill. Those of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 4, Amendment of Section 10 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 4, Amendment of Section 10 of the Principal Act forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 5, Amendment of Heading of Part 3 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 5, Amendment of Heading of Part 3 of the Principal Act forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 6, Repeal and Substitution of Section 12 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 6, Repeal and Substitution of Section 12 of the Principal Act forms part of the bill. Those of that opinion say aye. Contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 7, Insertion of new Section 12A to Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 7, Insertion of new Section 12A to the Principal Act forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 8, Repeal and Substitution of Section 16 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 8, Repeal and Substitution of Section 16 of the Principal Act forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. say aye. Of the contrary opinion, say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 9, amendment of Section 25 of Principal Act.
Honorable members, the question is that Clause 9, amendment of Section 25 of the Principal Act forms part of the bill. Those of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 10, insertion of new Section 25A to Principal Act.
Honorable members, the question is that Clause 10, insertion of new Section 25A to the Principal Act forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 11, amendment of the schedule to Principal Act.
Honorable members, the question is that Clause 11, amendment of the schedule to the Principal Act, forms part of the bill. Those of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 1, short title.
Honorable members, the question is that Clause 1, short title, forms part of the bill. Those of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the House resumes and that the Chairman reports progress on the bill.
Honourable members, the question is that the House resumes and the Chairman of the committee reports progress on the bill. As many as of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it. This Honourable House now resumes. Honourable members, I have to report that the bill was considered by a committee of the whole House and passed without amendment. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the Chairman's report be adopted.
Honourable members, the question is that the Chairman's report be adopted. As many as of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the third reading of the bill.
Honourable members, the question is that the bill be read a third time. Honourable members, the question is that the bill be read a third time and pass. As many as of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it.
Bill for an act shortly entitled Public Finance Management Amendment Bill 2023.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the introduction for the first reading, a bill for an act shortly entitled Public Debt Management Amendment Bill 2023.
The bill which seeks to amend the Public Debt Management Act number 2028, of 2015 to revise the definition of public debt, shortly entitled Public Debt Management Amendment Bill 2023.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg that this Honourable House be adjourned, sine die.
Honorable members, the question is that this honorable house be adjourned sine die. Honorable MP for St. Andrew Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise because I would have listened last night to a young lady, very passionate in her appeal and her concern, a matter that is now, I believe, of public importance. And I'm rising this morning, is it still this afternoon, to make an appeal that this does not deteriorate further into something that the public has to become too involved in. And I want to appeal that this be addressed in a way that the circumstances doesn't go beyond what they are right now. Mr. Speaker, I listened to the young lady on one of our public programs, and I'm speaking here as it relates to one of the community centers in my constituency. Do I have your permission to proceed?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just observing your facial reaction. Yeah. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to give some historical context to this to understand why I believe it's a matter of public importance. Prior to 2008, the start of this community center, the construction of this community center, the election was called 2008, and the work on the community center stopped. So, Speaker, as a matter of fact, right after the election, there were public pronouncements from the government that they will do no work on continuing the community center. And that was it. It was that. Absolutely nothing was done between 2008 and 2013 on that facility. After 2013's election, the community center restarted and was completed. Mr. Speaker, since then, a group of people who were actively involved in the construction, in the voluntary work that took place during that period, these people formed a committee that managed the community center from then till now. Mr. Speaker, I'm appealing this morning. There's a way to do things. There's a way to do things. Now, during that period, and I can explain why some people might be very passionate about this, during the period 2008 to 2013, prior to 2008, these women operated in a nearby building that were provided to them free of cost by Mr. Elias Jones of this community, that said community. They had about 15 sewing machines that they were literally at the point where they started making an income from the items that they were making. Mr. Speaker, without any questions, without any discussions, without any dialogue, someone showed up and took all of the sewing machines, indicating that they were acting upon instructions from the government. So these sewing machines were taken away. Mr. Speaker, they were never told until today anything. Mr. Speaker, in 2013, this is when the New National Party government returned into office. I was brought to the Youth Development Center in Grandance, and I was given a tour of the area where the sewing machines were placed from 2008 to 2013. It was sad, Mr. Speaker, not just what happened, but what was worse, what was really sad, was the fact that these sewing machines were now beyond repair. So I stood and I looked at them being taken away to be dumped. Mr. Speaker, these are the same people in question. They rallied and they worked hard. They raised funds. They contributed to build that community center in many cases after 2013. And note what I said. The government took a policy position that it was not going to complete the community center. Then it probably was about 20% done. As far as my memory, let me state that. So 20% is not a figure that we should act upon. Mr. Speaker, fast forwarding now to this last election, and which is why I want to say how things are done matters. The person who manages the key for the facility is Mr. Atiba Mawutu, a Rastafarian from that community. And I'm being specific, Mr. Speaker, because I remember in 2003, the very first time I heard reference to a community center for that village was at a meeting that was held in the yard of Mr. Hansel Japal. And Mr. Speaker, the name Atiba Mawutu, the person who manages the key, and I'm giving context to all of this, it stayed with me because this was the person in that meeting in 2003 who stood up and spoke on behalf of the community, making the strongest case that I ever heard for the facility. As a matter of fact, he ended his presentation that night by saying, I do not believe that we would ever have that community center because since the days of Sir Eric Matthew Gary, we've been begging and begging for it. Those were his exact words. This is not a political person. This is not, in my opinion, a partisan. I've never seen him in a partisan political activity. These are people who worked hard to ensure that what they have now is available for the community. So, Mr. Speaker, donations that were acquired, for example, of 20 computers that was still being used at the center. When I spoke to him last, Mr. Speaker, about $10,000, $15,000 was spent on acquiring drums in the past. They were all damaged. And he said they were in the middle of a process of repairing, they've just repaired as a matter of fact, but restarting the cultural program using those drums. I don't need to explain Mama Cannon drums and culture. Mr. Speaker, when the last election was held, God rest her soul, Miss Agatha John, who died thereafter, she was leading an after-school program in that community center. Mr. Speaker, she was told that the program will not continue. You ask, Mr. Speaker, the parents and teachers of the students who are attending the classes there every afternoon, the progress they were making. Mr. Speaker, someone representing, I believe, the Ministry of Works probably, or the Ministry of, I'm not even sure, Community Development, approached Mr. Mawutu as it relates to handing over the keys for the community center. This was after the general elections. Mr. Speaker, according to Mr. Mawutu, the young lady agreed not to further demand the keys after she did a tour of the facility and saw the condition of the facility and learned of what was happening at the facility. In other words, her reaction was that she felt the place was well managed. It was okay to continue as they were going. Mr. Speaker, persons who want to use the facility, they go to the person who manages the key, they access the key, they use the facility, and they move on. Mr. Speaker, I was very disturbed last night. And just coincidentally, I was riding up to Grenville when I just happened to turn on the radio. I was really disturbed to hear the story of persons from the housing brigade under instructions going to the community center, breaking the door, Mr. Speaker, changing the locks with no conversation held with the persons who manage the center or the person who manages the key. Mr. Speaker, all that was said, I don't want to repeat them here as to what was happening and why it was happening. But I'm making the point because I'm not even sure, I don't believe that the minister, line minister, is probably aware of this. I don't believe, and I'm going to convince myself he's not aware. But I'm making the point because I see this deteriorating into something that we do not want to encourage. Whoever, Mr. Speaker, is acting on behalf of the government, whoever are the persons making decisions and taking actions, Mr. Speaker, I want to say this, there's a way that things are done. The level of hostility, the level of verbal attacks, the confrontation, we don't want this to deteriorate further. Unfortunately, it has gone into the public domain, and I'm saying today, let us end it there by doing the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable MP for St. Andrew Southeast. MP for St. Andrew Northeast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise this morning to share my concern as well as displeasure with a very topical issue at this time as it relates to the low-income housing. This is the first opportunity I've had to really speak publicly on the matter, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these houses were designed and targeted to improve the living conditions of our low-income earners. And the fact that the new arrangement is such that they have to raise their finances through lending institutions before they can get access to these homes. These are my concerns, Mr. Speaker. Because if you understand the circumstances that low-income earners face, they are basically or will basically be unable to acquire these loans from the institutions. But not only that, if, let's imagine, some acquires the finances, it puts them in a situation where for a long period of time, there will be owing until they can gain that name or title to this property. Mr. Speaker, we have heard a lot of misconceptions presented by the authorities regarding those homes. To draw reference, Mr. Speaker, I've heard that it's your equity, it belongs to you as soon as you can come up with this money. That's not true, Mr. Speaker. We all know that whenever we go to a lending institution to secure funds, the property belongs to them until we are completed with the payment. That's facts. So why make people believe that? How are you feel? You won't feel good to have title to something immediately after purchase? This misconception, I condemn it, Mr. Speaker. Additionally, government must understand its responsibility to the people. So we have had situations where the previous homeowners of the low-income housing were not paying as expected. Some people have the opinion that they were getting these homes free. So as a result of these groups not paying, the measure that we are going to put in place to ensure that all monies are collected is to not have them owe us as government, but owe the financial institution. Government is moving away its responsibility of taking care of the needs of its people and passing it on to a financial institution whose sole purpose is to make profit. This is not the responsibility or the objective of a government. We should come up with more creative ways to allow these low-income earners to make payments for the homes. It was designed for them to transform, quote unquote, their living conditions. Some argument states that it's too good for them. I've listened carefully to the new chairman of the Housing Authority, and I'm baffled by some of the statements because it clearly reflects that they are not aware of the living conditions of some people in this country. So they have an opportunity to own and pay in an affordable manner until they can own these homes, but we have transferred the responsibility of government to a financial institution. As much as government has to find finances to do its work, it should not be on the backs of poor people. It should not be on the backs of these low-income earners who now will not have access to owning these homes. Mr. Speaker, I must record my displeasure in the new way that access to these homes is put forward by this administration. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable MP for St. Andrew Northeast. MP for South St. George.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning to the House also. Good afternoon. I was just testing you out to make sure that everyone is up. Mr. Speaker, just want to talk about the point that the Honorable MP just spoke about in regards to housing. And Mr. Speaker, sometimes I think we have to stop playing politics with things. And let's be straight up and honest. And let's see what we can do to really help the Grenadian people. Because, Mr. Speaker, I'm very passionate about this. Last year, I had a chance to visit Mount Rush and Sobeys. And when I look at the living conditions, when I look at the arrangement that was made to the previous administration, I look at the buildings, and you don't have to take my word for it. You can go up and look at it. People are living in conditions where they are mold in the building. The tiles are broken. The railings are broken also. And you are living on heights. So you have cases where children could fall over if these things are not replaced. The arrangement that was there before, Mr. Speaker, was not an arrangement that would have been in the benefit of the people. To begin with, let's go back a bit. The people were given low-income houses, and they had to put in their own cupboards, their own closets, make changes and so to the building that you have to occupy to make it livable. If we are talking about low-income houses, how can it be low-income when the people, after they get the homes, have to go and hire carpenters and so to do all these things? And they still have to pay for it. It's not free. They have to pay for it. No. Let's go further. If these properties have any issues now, they have to take out of their pocket to provide maintenance for it. This is not the case now. We took our time and said, if we are giving someone something, let's give them something that is worthwhile. and that is good. So when you enter the phase 2 of the project now, you are entering an apartment with cupboards, with closets, with everything. This is what you call a government who is looking for its people and not just playing politics, Mr. Speaker. Now we're talking about equity. I don't think the member understands equity. So let me explain to her what equity is. When you purchase the apartment building, you are getting it for approximately 1/3 of its value. So immediately, you can use that value or the equity right there in the apartment to do something else. Now, if you want to talk about the poor and vulnerable, as they always speak about, and let's go into it. I'm not playing politics. We get into the meat of the stuff now. You have to try, Mr. Speaker, to find a way to elevate people from their circumstances. And when someone purchases one of the apartments now, what will happen is that they can now get equity in the properties that they can use to better their lives in other places. For example, you may have a child and the child has to study. You may want to take a student loan. You can use that apartment now for equity to take a student loan. Right? You may have a business idea, but you want it to be funded. You cannot use the equity in the building now, Mr. Speaker, to help finance that opportunity. That is the way you take people out of poverty and not boasting about them being in a poor and vulnerable state. And this is the responsibility of government. So sometimes we have to stop playing politics with things. We have a housing assistance program, Mr. Speaker. If someone wants material, they can come to the MPs and they can make their case. We do the application and we assist them. We have this program now, Mr. Speaker, where we looked at it, we analyzed it, and we saw the flaws in it. And we don't want to put back people in the same position. Now the Minister of Social Development have to find funds to do maintenance on the same properties in phase 1. So do we continue with the same thing because we want to play politics, or do we try to address the matter? So, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying to the members on the other side, you are doing the country a disservice when you continue to play politics with people, to pretend that you are there for the poor and vulnerable and not trying to help them better their lives. And we see that our responsibility, and we are in government now, Mr. Speaker, to help our people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. So I'm saying, let's stop playing the politics. Let's try to help our people. Every time you see we play these things, we are not doing the country a service. Thank you.
Thank you, MP, for St. George South. Honorable MP for St. Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll try to be very brief. Mr. Speaker, this segment of the Parliament sitting is not supposed to be a presentation and response, but I must say something. I cannot leave it like that, Mr. Speaker. I beg your indulgence. My dear friend from St. George South, he has said quite a lot. And some of it may be relevant, some of it may not be quite relevant to the whole situation. Mr. Speaker, first of all, he said when he was wrapping up that if someone wants house repair, they go to the MP. I just want to ask the question, which MP and where and how and which MP is listened to? And this is a question I have raised in this honorable house many times. How do we direct people, to have access? We as sitting MPs who are not in government, how? This question has never been answered. And I remember the member for St. David, and as you said, the Prime Minister said, yes, this is something that needs to be addressed, and it would be addressed, and members would recall that. So we're not playing politics here, we're playing reality. Up to now, we're 1 and what, a half into the new regime, and the question hasn't been answered. So the member is comfortable, he's sitting comfortable, because people can go to him and ask. These members, us members on this side, we are extremely uncomfortable because we cannot respond to the basic needs of the people who are Grenadians, Caribbeans, whatever, they are Grenadians. So this is one thing. The other thing is to say that we don't want to rise up people. The amount of people who have got no house repair, nice little wooden houses, toilet and bathroom, and they followed us in doing that because they washed it with a wash program, which is essentially the same thing, giving toilet and bathroom to needy people. So if it wasn't worthwhile, then why was it implemented? Mr. Speaker, the last thing I want to speak about is the equity. Whatever the meaning of the equity is, those of us on this side who don't know what equity means, whatever the meaning is, if you cannot face the bank because of your standard of living, your income, whatever is your situation, you can reach to the point of equity. So the people that the member is talking about, and all people here are we are talking about at 2 different levels. Some people will be able to take care of themselves. People who can afford it, I always say, let them build their house and buy their houses. A lot of Grenadians have built beautiful houses, but there are some that living according to what the Bible says, the poor will always be with us. So we can't talk equity here. We have to talk about how we elevate these people who do not have the wherewithal and the means. So there has to be an next program that companies, that program for the equity side of it, where you go to the bank and you have 1/3 and so on, all power to those who can do that. But we on this side, we are concerned about the people who cannot afford. This is not our only vocation in life, but it has to be a part of our vocation, because our conscience would not let us do differently. These people need help, and the government has to recognize it and has to deal with it. Otherwise, you cannot lift them out of poverty. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable MP for St. Mark. Let me just make this comment before the Honorable MP for St. George North East stands. Let me remind this Honorable House that when you're speaking on the adjournment, as the Honorable MP rightly said, it's not a debate section. You just give MPs a chance to make some interjection, get some things in that they had no time to do before. All right, so let's keep it that way, please. Honorable MP for St. George North East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I rise in the adjournment to highlight National Heroes Day. This administration is keen on uniting all of our people. And one of the most divisive periods in our history. And that had to do with the loss of lives on October 19th. We have designated this day National Heroes Day. Mr. Speaker, I want to take the opportunity to invite all Grenadians to an ecumenical service at the National Stadium for 9 a.m. on Thursday, October 19th. We would have the tolling of bells. That would be followed by a 1 minute of silence, and that will be nationwide at 1 p.m. We will also have light tributes, which will take place at the Carnage at 7 p.m. Candlelight gathering. Again, all Grenadians are encouraged to be a part, and we will have a strobe light display. Transportation will be provided, and in the coming days leading up to the 19th, you are going to hear more details from the National Celebrations Committee and the National Organizing Committee jointly speaking about it. So, Mr. Speaker, essentially as it relates to national unity, this is the single biggest step, and I want to commend the administration of the day. We didn't cause it. Half of us, or a good bit of us, was not around during the revolution. But our responsibility is not to take these things lightly, but it's to say that while we did not lose loved ones there, many of us understand the importance of healing and coming together. Lives were lost, Mr. Speaker, and as such, the responsibility of the government is not to continue the tribal warfare that currently exists in that moment or period in time, but is to say to us that we need to be responsible as a people to never repeat it again. And we are listing this day as National Heroes Day, not because we want to just highlight the revolution, but because we see the day significant to mark it as National Heroes Day, to name heroes to come. And Mr. Speaker, the heroes are going to be, in my humble opinion, based on interaction with people from all walks of life, and not just political, but certain sports, and maybe even some living. So we are calling on the nation to rally around this. Too often we always looking for the tit for tat and sides and position on this and that, when half of the time is just wrong and full of our opinions. We have no facts to back up what we say. So essentially, these bodies of Grenadians whose lives were lost were never buried. This is something, I'm not a spiritual man, I'm not a preacher, but I'm saying this is something as a nation that we should see important to give some semblance of respect on one hand, and to mark the day so that it never repeats itself in our history. We are loving people in Grenada, and as a culture, to continue the love, we must continue to promote the unity. We must continue to promote the togetherness. And this is the single biggest step, Mr. Speaker, in healing our nation. Now, with that said, I can't leave without addressing the substance. So it's not a debate. But honestly, Mr. Speaker, I want to say as it relates to this housing program. Now, we received grant funding to build the houses, not to give out the houses for free. We also, Mr. Speaker, built these houses with the intent to improve the housing stock of the country for vast majority of Grenadians. Now, I am not here to argue if the people who inherited phase one is still in the low income bracket. That's not my business. What we are saying is, Mr. Speaker, we are faced with two problems. One, on the issue of compliance. Two, we are also faced with the problem of maintenance. The question is, and if concerns are raised genuinely, what do you propose? What is your alternative? To say that collaborating with the private sector, in this instance, a financial institution or two, to support the finances to purchase so that you can then own the property and over a period pay for it, or rather have it as part of your asset base and over a period complete the payments for it, is the wrong approach. Then my question is, what is the alternative? Because, Mr. Speaker, let me say this, that the responses thus far to our housing situation in the country is feeble, or has been feeble for a long time. And the minister is here, he can attest to it. When we came in and we saw the maintenance program, for example, the house repairs, the budget for that was a meager amount. I think it was closer to about 15,000 thereabouts on average. The fact is, if you take all of these things into context, what will be the cost to build whatever the dimension is? I don't remember it from the top of my head, of these houses. And the question you had to ask is, building a bathroom and toilet on a wooden structure, is it not putting you in a more vulnerable position 3-4 years from now? We are susceptible to all kinds of externalities, including natural disasters. So if we are talking about sustainable development, if we are talking about lifting people out, I agree with the temporary repairs, and we have continued that. We are not satisfied, Mr. Speaker, that housing needs to just reside around somebody having to run down a member of parliament to get assistance. And I am baffled, because if the member for St. Mark, for example, is saying that this is just 1 year half, right? You created these programs. You've been in office this long time. How come you don't know how to do, where to go, and so all of a sudden? So you're telling me that you create something, and now all that has changed is the executive. It's just a different political party in power. We have not stopped a number of these programs because we understand, Mr. Speaker, to a large extent, that as difficult as change is, In some instances, some people have been built up for more than 20 plus years with this kind of setting and therefore cannot live outside of it. So we are catering for them. But I'm saying, all of a sudden, we do not know how to access these things as member of parliament. And some of us have been a member of parliament for a number of years. And I am saying, Mr. Speaker, it is time that we lift the conversation around these elements: poverty, housing, access to healthcare, and stop the tribalism. I believe that the administration is open to listen to the opposition on recommendations, but I am not hearing recommendations. All I am hearing is that we shouldn't do this because the poor man can't afford it. And Mr. Speaker, let's be honest. The people applied before the election. We didn't change the people who applied. A number of people applied. We didn't change the people. So I'll give you an example without calling names. Party activists from the former administration was on the application forms. Are they low income? I don't know. The point I'm making is that when you talk and give the impression that the house was meant for poor people and so on, you must have the evidence to support what you're saying. There is absolutely no indication that these housing units would have been able to afford it, whether or not we say we set up the payment plan or not, by low and in some instances no income people. However, there is need, Mr. Speaker, for different categories. If you say phase 1 was for low income, fine. Phase 2 is not for low income, but it's for income where you can manage. And in this instance, it's going to help bolster your equity base, your asset base as an individual, and lead, in some instances, some question of generational wealth for your younger children. And as such, Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage people to take the opportunity, those who were chosen, and to utilize it in the best way possible, and do not get involved with all this unnecessary bantering. We know that there are people who are going to struggle with their housing situation, and time again, different programs, various programs from the Ministry of Social Development help to assist. Again, these are things we inherited. We didn't change that component of the governance, and we want to encourage opposition as well. If you have any credible suggestion, you don't have to give it to the government. Go out on a public radio and say what is the alternative to the housing units. Say how you're going to maintain it. Say how you're going to pay to keep security. Say how you're going to pay to clean the garbage, etc. Look at Mount Rush, for example. It's a mess with garbage, and I can get in other aspects. But I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, we have to be mature about this, and let's have a national conversation, if you please, but come with solutions rather than criticisms. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable MP for St. George Northeast. I want to caution again that you have to keep your contribution and interjection of a debating nature. Please do. Leader of Government Business. Honorable MP, can you turn your light off?
Speaker, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to add some information here in respect of the parliamentary. Sorry. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, in respect of the parliamentary offices, we have 15 such offices around the country. And I can speak for the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, that these social programs are not necessarily administered in any of the parliamentary offices, but you can access all of these services. And I can say specifically in respect of housing and community development, of which I am directly responsible for. And if you have any problem, Mr. Speaker, you can call me at the ministry. I will receive your call. And if for one reason or the other I'm not able to receive the call, I will definitely return the call.
and many people who've contacted me can say the same. So how can you access these services? There is a housing coordinator. There is a community liaison officer for every single constituency. They do not work with any minister or any MP, sorry. They don't work with any MP or any senator, anybody in the constituency. They work with the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs. They are accountable to the administrative staff within that ministry. And they must comply. If they fail to comply, there are consequences under the public service rules. I say this to say, Mr. Speaker, that I would encourage that we can obtain the contact information for these individuals who work with the ministry, and the ministry will be very willing to give it to all of the senators, ministers, as the case may be, MPs, so that they can be able to contact the respective persons in their constituency. Every application or every individual who approaches these officers, they must take a complete application forwarded to the ministry. They do not have the right or privilege to not receive the application. The ministry is the one that makes the decision as it relates to processing applications. I say this to say that, Mr. Speaker, it is a very simple and straightforward process. There is no one who is a law unto themselves. There is a ministry, and we function in that regard. Also, I would encourage because there are 15 MP offices. I would say that those officers can actually facilitate the process by visiting your office on the constituency day. Yes, they are authorized to so do. They can visit your office on your constituency day, and if you have an office for them, you can, right, so that they can fill up the forms and take it to the ministry. It's about service to people. You reach the people where they are. It is allowed. If you fail to contact them, then it's your problem. But they are authorized to so do. So I say this for the record, Mr. Speaker. Right. So, Mr. Speaker, I just want to, this is all I think I want to say today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Leader of Government Business. All right, I sense that you're the last. So, as we close, let me just make these comments. I want to commend all the MPs who actively participated in the cyber awareness program that Parliament, in fact, launched. I think it was 29th of September. I want to also commend the Women's Caucus. Honorable Peter David is not here. I must commend, chaired by, of course, our Honorable Dr. Modest Cohen. I saw tripartite at work in this caucus. I was very impressed with the way the two sides were able to come together and look at the issue of gender-based violence and other pertinent matters. So commendations are in order for the Women Caucus for the work done. And we hope that would just push us further as we attempt to address some of the burning issues in our society. And with this, I think we can now take the vote. The honorable members, the question is that this honorable House be adjourned, sign it aye. All those with that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. This honorable house now stands adjourned, sign nay die.
Yeah, we have quite a few rules. Yeah.
So we're going to silence our phones or so in the meantime, so that they don't. Ron. Ron. That flag off key in the center there. I say that is the flag off key in the center there. There, this is. Yes, yeah, my thing went off. Good afternoon to all our viewers on GIS Channel 22, our Facebook page and YouTube channel, and other social media platforms. I am Sherry Noel. Welcome to this live broadcast panel discussion initiated by the Ministry of Agriculture in recognition of World Food Day celebrations 2023 under the theme, Water is Life, Water is Food, Leave No One Behind. In the next few moments, we will explore the critical aspects of sustainable water management, its significance in the face of growing global challenges, and the collective actions needed to ensure a water-source world. World Food Day is observed internationally on October 16th in collaboration with the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. In 2023, the Ministry of Agriculture and Lands, Fisheries and Cooperatives has extended the celebrations beyond the day October 16th to the 20th. From the Ministry of Agriculture, we do anticipate a very interactive session where the panelists will be dissecting the sustainable management and use of the precious resource, water. Let me now introduce to you our panelists. We have Mr. Wim Cox, Manager of Planning and Development, National Water and Sewage Authority. Mr. Orlando Harvey, Marine and Coastal Project Manager with the Nature Conservancy. Ms. Christy Sylvester, Nutrition Officer, Grenada Food and Nutrition Council. Mr. Dillon Palmer, Forestry Officer attached to the Forestry Division, Ministry of Agriculture. And Mr. Trevor Thompson, Project Manager of the Soil Care Phase 1 project. Before we hear from our panelists, I wish to invite to the podium to make brief remarks Ms. Lauren St. Louis, who is the Chair of the World Food Day Committee. Ms. St. Louis.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. And good afternoon to our people who are listening to us online. The significance of World Food Day is something that not everybody really thinks about. So that is what I'm going to talk about today. What World Food Day means, why it is that we even celebrate World Food Day, and what we can do going forward instead of just having a World Food Day celebration one day, how we can take it into our lives and put those things into practice. So, World Food Day is celebrated globally on October 16th. It's an annual event that serves as a reminder of the critical importance of food security and the role of agriculture in ensuring that people worldwide have access to safe, nutritious, and sufficient food. This year's theme, Water is Life, Water is Food, Leave No One Behind, emphasizes the need for us to sustainably manage our water resources, including remaining cognizant of our actions, which can have negative effects on our water resources, so that future generations are not left without this precious resource. There are a few significant purposes that World Food Day serves. I'll give you just a few of them. World Food Day highlights the objective of achieving zero hunger worldwide. As outlined in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 2, this goal seeks to end hunger, achieve food security, improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. It's a global platform that raises awareness of the critical issue of hunger and food insecurity. So this day underscores the link between food security and poverty and emphasizes the root causes of hunger, such as poverty, inequality, and access to resources. The day also highlights the need for sustainable agricultural and food production practices and encourages the adoption of eco-friendly methods that protect the environment and ensure food security for future generations. World Food Day also encourages global cooperation. It serves as a platform for governments, international organizations, NGOs, and individuals to come together and collaborate to fight against hunger. The final purpose that I will mention is that World Food Day inspires action at all levels and raises awareness about the critical issue of global hunger and food insecurity, reminding people everywhere of the ongoing challenges related to food access and nutrition. It reminds us that everyone can contribute to addressing global food challenges while making conscious choices regarding food production, food consumption, and waste. It also celebrates the successes and progress made in improving food security and nutrition and acknowledges the efforts of individuals and organizations working to alleviate hunger and malnutrition. In conclusion, World Food Day is significant because it draws attention to the pressing issues of hunger, food security, and sustainable agriculture. It serves as a reminder that achieving zero hunger is a global responsibility and encourages individuals and organizations to take action towards this particular goal. This year's theme shows the interconnection between food production and sustainable water management, as water is a fundamental resource for food production. Therefore, ensuring its responsible and sustainable use is essential to addressing global food security, environmental conservation, and climate change adaptation challenges. We look forward today to fruitful discussions, which we hope will lead to changed actions and a more food and water secure future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. St. Louis. But it's now time for us to get down to the business at hand so we can have this very important panel discussion. And I just want to reiterate the theme, which I think is very, very significant in 2023. Water is life, water is food, leave no one behind. So I believe it's based on the theme and its importance. I think it's very fitting to begin this panel discussion with the guests from the National Water and Sewage Authority, Mr. Wim Cox.
There we go. Oh, great. Testing. Okay, perfect. Right. Pleasant good afternoon, all. And just want to say thanks to the organizers for this occasion where NAWASA can again inform people as to what it is doing to ensure water sustainability for Grenada and Grenadians. So I look at the theme and it says water sustainability. And when you look at the word sustain, it means to maintain. It means continuation. And I also go to NAWASA's mission statement. And our mission statement says to provide customers with a safe, adequate, and I'll come back to the word adequate because that's where sustainability lies, and reliable water supply and safe disposal of wastewater in a viable and efficient manner that meets and exceeds customers' expectation, and to ensure the development of our organization, communities, and our nation. But before I get into the meat of it, I just want to speak a little bit about NAWASA as an organization. So as an organization, NAWASA currently boasts of 28 treatment plants across the water supply systems across Grenada. In addition, we also have 4 of which is groundwater. Now, a recent climate vulnerability assessment of Grenada would have shown that Grenada is very vulnerable to climate change. And the reason for that is because NAWASA, in our current capacity, 90% of our water supply comes from surface water. And when we say surface water, we mean rivers, streams, etc. Why are we so vulnerable? Climate change is the talking point in today's world, and how vulnerable our small island developing states are to climate change. So given that 90% of our water supply comes from surface water, we are relatively vulnerable. Means that with the impacts of climate change, if there is a drought, we are going to be severely impacted because we just won't have enough water to meet our daily demand.
Records at the traffic department shows that a total of 1,000 447 accidents were reported for the year 2012, which includes 3 road fatalities. 2,946 accidents were reported for the year 2022, which includes 8 road fatalities. This is a significant increase of 104%. This is alarming. When a family tragically loses a loved one, does it matter whether by means of a gun or a motor vehicle? To avoid accidents,